What's going on, y'all? Welcome to a very special episode of From the Inside Out. I'm your host, Bro Rider, Inspiration Guy, and today I have a very special guest, Jas Abraham. What's going on, Jas? How you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing amazing, yo. I loved it. Love the intro. Let's go.
All right, y'all. So for the record, this is an impromptu live stream. I legit messaged Jazz said, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" She's like, "I'm actually taking some time. I just got off this call," and I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm doing a live impromptu episode, and I was sitting wanting to get on." And she was like, "I ain't scared." I was like, "Oh, okay. Let's do it. So real quick, y'all. Today's episode, and this is the first time she's hearing it. All right, but today, I wanted to do a quick live stream managing mental health during the holidays.
Mm,
Managing mental health during the holidays. As we know, this can be a very bittersweet time for many people. And I promised that I was gonna just send just some tips and some pointers when it comes to navigating through the holidays, because as you and I both know, like we're in a different time. We are in a different time. Even controversy over the names of the holidays and all the different things can create some conflict. But the one thing that I've always learned is that family is always going to be family. Right? We can't change that. Like, what we have is what we have. Who we are is who we are. So how can we make the most of our time? And I promise that, again, being in this EQ space and being in all the spaces I'm in, I promise that I would share just some tips, right, to get through the holidays. And why not? Right? It does not make sense to not have the boundaries coach. All right, the boundaries coach, Jas Abraham, on with me to help me just unpack that, make it practical, make it simple, make it plain. But before we jump in, so now you know what the topic is, sis. But before we jump in, if you could, for all of our viewers, those who don't know you, can you just do a quick intro, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and all that good stuff?
yes. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Like you said, super impromptu, but let's go. So everyone, of course, I am Jess Abraham. I am a boundaries coach, favorite boundaries coach at that. And I coach young professionals to effectively teach people how to treat them. That's what I focus on. That's what I do. That's how I've helped people throughout the years. And I'm out here in San Antonio, Texas, doing that, but helping people all around the world. So very grateful for that, for sure.
I love it. I love it. And can you, if you could, I'm just curious because this is actually even new for myself, because I want to go ahead and share these on other platforms. How did you get into boundaries coaching? I know that might be a heavy loaded question. Oh, if you're okay sharing, just a little bit of background, because I love the fact that you even niche down into that space,
Yeah,
because we hear it all the time, and I think it's always misconstrued. What is a boundary? What isn't a boundary? All those things, and I definitely have some questions aside from what we're going to talk about today. But like, yeah, what like inspired you, or who inspired you to actually become a boundaries coach?
oh,
There you go.
technical
You good?
difficulty there.
You're good.
Apologies. um but really, yeah, not that much of a loaded question, because it's my life, right? So what really is, it's, I noticed throughout the year, throughout my life, different things that happen in life that I've been operating in such a way where I've just kind of been a person that's really about my boundaries, right? Regardless of who it is. The first insight I really got and started really paying attention to it and like, oh yeah, we doing this, is when I it was in college and I needed to set real boundaries with my mom. So I really like started there with her, and I'm like, oh, I can do this with my mom. I can do this with everybody.
Yeah.
So, and then once, but again, I was just operating like that throughout the years. I wasn't
Can I
necessarily,
pause you for a second,
yeah,
though? Can I
yeah,
pause you for a second? Again,
yeah,
just for context, because I love to keep this stuff practical. Boundaries with a parent is
parent.
definitely key. If you're open to sharing just maybe one example of why, what prompted that for you, and again, just whatever you're comfortable sharing, just because I think for our viewers, our audience, whether teenagers, young adults, like, these are things that they could relate to. So if there was like, what was kind of
Absolutely.
one of the things that you're like, okay, we got to really like, set a
Use
boundary
it.
here for that. Like, we got to really have that conversation. What was that like? Or what was one
Absolutely.
example for you?
One example, I the main one comes to mind, just to just say a little bit about it is when I was in college, I moved from my mom's house when I was 17 years old. Go off to college. Shout out to Georgia State, my alma mater, out there in
Okay, go
Atlanta.
dogs.
Yep. So yeah, so Panthers out there. But I remember it was a time when she had called me and like, I'm in college, I'm living life, having a great time, not doing anything crazy, just being responsible and stuff too. And then there was a point that she discovered I'm dating someone that she didn't want me to date. And
Got
I'm
it.
like, what?
Mm.
So she called me with that, and then I'm like, look, ma, like, no, I had to
Yeah.
tell her, like, this is, in a sense, this is my life, and I'm not gonna do that. So
Yeah.
she didn't necessarily like it when I
Yeah.
told her that, because she used to like, I'm your mom, you kind of do what I say type thing. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So it was the real thing that I discovered, like, yeah, of I'm gonna tell my mom no, and we gonna operate in this way. Well, I'll say this part because this was really got me to like, if I can do this with my mom,
Hmm.
anybody can kind of get it in a way.
Yeah.
So with she didn't like that, and she decided that she didn't necessarily want to talk to me for a period of time.
Yeah.
Right, we're good now. We have a phenomenal relationship these days, but it took time to get there to that space. And she just was like, yeah. So I was like, okay, not necessarily the best situation. This is my only mom, right?
Yeah.
Really, and but I'm like, that's what she choose to do. That's on her. And
Hmm.
yeah, again, once I discovered I could do it with my mom, I could do it with anyone. But again,
Yeah.
just operating in that way. So
Such a
on
such
that
a
part of
yeah.
it,
Definitely such a beautiful like topic and example just because it's like we know from parent like I always share when I do paradise like children's goals is to like well our goal as a parent is to like set a boundary and then children's goals to push the boundary and then like at the end of the day like where can we meet in the middle,
absolutely.
right, versus it just breaking and then not having anything or then just having like not doing anything and then like resentful. I mean there's so many like we can unpack that on a definitely another episode, but like if we don't have the communication, if we don't have the tools, if we can't have that, yeah, I mean communication I think is really important. And of course there's all these other things like empathy and then having
Absolutely.
the EQ and just really trying to have those different pieces in the conversation.
Yeah.
But I think, and like you said, there was a space where there was a disconnect, and
Absolutely.
sometimes it's the absence of not having someone or something that makes you really think about it more and really say, okay, am I going to fight for this or not?
Yeah.
And so, and I love how you came back with, okay, we are. However, here's how it's going to be. I even have some friends who like are married, they have children, and like the in-laws necessarily don't get along per se with the spouse, and it's just like it's inauthentic sometimes.
Yeah.
So like it got to the point where they set their boundaries. Like, look, if we can't figure this out, like I can't be bringing my kids around because they're gonna feel the inauthenticity.
Yeah.
Like we don't want this fake. And he, one of my boys was very like firm. Him and his wife. So I was like, wow, props. And it meant being away and not bringing the grandchildren around for a while. Because
Yeah.
it was one of those like, oh, you're not gonna let me see my grandkids type situation, and then like during the holidays, birthdays, all the different
Yep.
things. And he was like, no, because I don't want my kids to be around something that is not genuine, something that is
Absolutely.
not authentic. Now, it doesn't mean you can't, it has to be perfect because we know that's not reality. But how
Yeah.
can we get it to a place? And I think this is a great segue kind of into the topic today. How can we get it into a place where we can actually still have an authentic time, where we still can enjoy the company and our presence, irrespective of all the different things? So today's topic: managing mental health during the holidays. So we got a couple different tips, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually share what the tip is, and then if you can kind of share uh, or the boundaries perspective or anything that just comes to mind that would be helpful, just thinking just on a super practical level, what are some ways or things that our audience, our viewers can implement, try, or at least think about during the holiday season?
Absolutely.
So number one, Managing holiday expectations. Managing holiday expectations. What would be your thoughts on that, or some practical advice on what does that look like to manage those holiday expectations?
All right, so this can go so many different ways. But something, when you mentioned the first thing that came to my mind is that it's kind of like the expectation of self. Because I'm a big believer that in this, like, you must have your boundaries with yourself before you can try to put it in place and implement it and enforce it for other people. Because it's important for you to even know what you want, what you're doing, things of that sort. But when you say about the managing expectations, it's just like, make sure, well, again, the thing that comes to mind is just making sure that you are still doing the things that you normally do, in a sense. Like, I know some people, I mentioned, well, I have a podcast and talked about this, but some people are traveling, some people are staying home, like, just don't fall too far out of your routine, right? Because, yeah, I mean, unless you mean like something else. You're talking about anything. You're talking about family, yourself, whatever, or wherever I want to go with it. I just want to
Yeah,
make
no,
sure
no.
I'm
I mean,
giving
you're
it
actually
right to
ahead
the
because there's
people.
a couple things, but I think just generally, like, let's start with what you said, the mindset. So
Okay.
expectations, as in, like, for me, when I think about managing, holiday expectations, is like, well, first of all, what am I expecting to receive, and what am I expecting to give? Like, mentally prepare yourself for what that's gonna actually look like you say, time wise, and giving of myself that's going to be
Yeah.
healthy, and I want to frame all of the things that we share today in a, is that healthy or unhealthy,
Okay.
right? Like,
Yep.
let's use that frame so that as our viewers or audiences are listening to this, like, managing holiday expectations, like, which goes kind of with, like, the idea, like, it's not a fantasy. I mean, I love, don't get me wrong, I like my fair share of Lifetime Hallmark movies, right? But we know the reality is that's not it, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's so much traffic going around right now. Stores are running out of stuff. Um, People aren't showing up like they used to. Like, for me, I'll give you an example. When I was growing up in the Bay, Filipino family, we huge. Now, my parents and all of her siblings, they migrated from the Philippines, so there's like 9 of them. So every holiday, we all connected. Me and all my cousins, for years, it was just us. But of course, my cousins got older. They started getting married. They started having their own families. So they were all going to different sides. So the family parties didn't look as deep as they used to be.
Yeah.
And I was on the younger side of it. So I'm like, oh, where's this cousin or that cousin, right? And it got to the point where, like, I started getting sad because they weren't there. Or maybe they would come and they would leave really quick. So I had to manage my own expectations of, like, hey, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna enjoy and appreciate whoever is there. And of course, if I'm missing someone, like, bringing those memories up would be cool, or even continuing maybe some traditions that were passed on along the way. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking of, like, so mindset wise, so that there isn't a letdown,
Yeah.
right? And I think we can't compare. So managing expectations to me is like not comparing last holiday to this holiday.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, that's good. All right, so just again, I want to make sure that I'm on track here in the space, and we, connected here in that way. But so talking about the mindset aspect of it is just kind of like you're saying, just not anticipating for things to be like they were, right? Or going into it with a different mindset, or just maybe you're even a different person than you were, right? So
Mm-hmm.
even if you are and you're showing up a certain way, family, friends, whomever may be used to you showing up one way, right? But now you know you're not necessarily the same person you were last year for the holidays around this time. You're a different person now, but managing that, like, okay, they may see it this way. It may be, again, healthy or unhealthy, however they want to see it. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this is who I am now. So really just managing that part of it to ensure that you're still being true to you, and all of the things that's going on necessarily around you. So Yeah, that's what I have on that one.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. And another tip number two, doing your own self check-ins. So throughout the time before, the gathering, on your way to the gathering, doing a self check-in. What would that look like for you? And then I can jump in right after that. Like doing a self check-in, checking with, now we're talking more emotionally, right? So the first piece is like mindset, like managing what that's going to look like, not comparing last year to this year, who's there, who's not there, right? Because that already kind of put us in this like could be put us in like a sad state, right? So
Yeah.
that's what we want to avoid. And of course, those sad state, that's a feeling, and the emotions kick in. So mentally or emotionally checking in, what would you say on that?
So I would tell people to really acknowledge your feelings, right? Whatever it is that you're feeling, acknowledge that. Like, don't just let it or hide it or be. I'm gonna say, I'll just take it here. I mean, well, with yourself, acknowledge it first with yourself, and then if you have someone that you truly confide in, talk to them about really how you're feeling. Like being honest about that, because that's the only way that you can, work through that stuff and just feel what you feel, kind of in peace. Right? Don't have this ease about feeling a certain way, but I just acknowledge your feelings and feel what you're feeling.
Beautiful. No, I love it. I love it. Yeah. So we teach, right? Self awareness, self check ins. So number
Yep.
one, like taking that time, like before, I mean, because we all know when we hear who's gonna be there, who's not gonna be there, what's gonna happen, all the things.
Yeah.
Like for me, when I know like my wife or my mother-in-law is gonna make a certain food, that emotion's like, oh, I can't wait. Like we about to have the green bean casserole, we gonna get the rolls, right? All the things. But then sometimes it goes the other way, and so I think having a self check in, like, okay, what am I feeling, or what, going into this? Like, am I really excited, or, and am I not? And like you said, just kind of being with that. And like we
Yep.
always say, acknowledge it, be with it, but don't stay there. Right.
Please
But
don't
don't
stay
stay
there.
there. And I think what happens a lot of times people do, and then they go to the function, they go to the party, and again, people have different ways of coping, unhealthy ways. We'll just keep it at that
Unhealthy.
of coping, whether it's avoidance, maybe, being passive aggressive, and on, as we know what could happen, people start turning up, all those kinds of things, and then it can just go left real quick. It can go left real
Yeah.
quick. So I think checking in emotionally, like where are you, being honest with yourself. And I love what you said, maybe calling someone just to kind of talk it through, not necessarily for advice. We call that like the one-on-one check-in, right,
Yep.
in our practice. And that goes with the next step is like have a plan,
Yeah.
right? Have a plan. So when you are approaching the holidays, or you're approaching, again, during this time, not even just during the actual holiday itself, but even the days leading up to it or the days after it, like when you notice yourself going through your go through, I always think about, okay, what's the plan? Who can I reach out to? How can I continue to, again, be as present as possible, but still let people know, like, I might be a little tender sometimes, or, so what would be your advice for that? For someone who, like, speaking on boundaries, because I always believe, and you could, correct me if I'm wrong, or add on to that, but I always believe like boundaries aren't really made for just the other person, or actually for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And so, like, what would be kind of a simple approach with all your clients that you have coming up this season? In terms of like how they set their boundaries for themselves going into the holidays.
All right, so this is good. I definitely I like this one, this question for sure. Because when I think of that, and you're talking about having a plan, it's important for me. One thing I teach them, like, first of all, we got to know what you want,
Mm,
right? So we talked about a little bit about managing those expectations and things, but I also think it's important for, well, I'll say this, in addition to, it's important to also know what you want, because if you don't know what you want, then you kind of don't know kind of what to do about what you want, right? You can't have a plan without actually knowing what you want. So first step, let's know what you want first, right? And then once you're moving and operating in that, because now we're going after the things that you want, we want you to again, it's important to me. I guess because I'm so big on community, having someone that can assist you with your plan, right? So not necessarily have to go through it alone. It's you're not in this thing alone. You're especially during this time, like you said, not just during the holidays, but just the whole season itself. But I just think it's definitely important for you to know what you want before you can even attempt to implement any plan.
Yeah, I love that. And then so, and as you were sharing, I was thinking to myself like having a plan as well as like number one, having the clarity on knowing kind of what you want to get. And I also thought about what you said, community, and the verbiage we use like with the schools is allyship. Having your allies,
I
having your
like
allies
that.
with you, having your community. And I think there's also a space there where when I think of boundaries, like start with, hey, I'm gonna come, but I may not be there the whole time.
That long. Absolutely.
Right, like in your
Absolutely.
mentally, like having the plan, managing the expectations,
Yep.
being clear up front, like, hey y'all, like again, everyone's gonna have different situations, and of course we hope that everyone can spend as much time together as possible and have all the holiday cheer and all of that good stuff, but we just know that's not always the case. Right,
Absolutely.
or sometimes people get uncomfortable and talking about different topics. Like again, 2023, we're just in a different space now. And so I always feel like, okay, having someone that we can talk to. And again, I don't look at it as like, oh, because we're going to try to, gang up on another person or
Yeah.
try to have our way, because I've seen that happen a lot. I mean, I grew up where it was like arguments so bad, like people leaving, like it. And I think that's, it's crazy that as I'm talking about this, the past, I always say the past is always present,
Yeah.
right? The past is always present. And I think about, and I say the only difference now is how do we address it now that we have grown and matured and have developed a little bit more EQ, AQ. And I think about like, man, why my cousins and my aunts and uncles, when they would like get into it, like families are leaving, we have to leave, my cousins got to leave, like all the kids are like, we're just
Party's
kind of
over.
like, we're stuck, game over, no more flag football, two hand touch, no more Nintendo, right? And so I think that really is one of those situations where if you are maybe in that type of situation, it's not about not having the conversation, but I always think about like, is this really the time for it? Number one. Number two, what are the expectations of talking about the topic or the conversation or bringing it up, right? And then figuring out, can we do it in a way where like we're really wanting to meet in the middle or have that win-win.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely I like that you mentioned that because it's something that came across my mind, but I guess I didn't say it. But that's one of the things that I've been telling clients, and even again have an episode coming out talking about this. But to have it, like you said, setting a time frame, like okay, I'll show up, I'll come, but it'll be for an hour, or I'm gonna leave by 4 o'clock, or whatever it is. So yeah, I definitely like that you mentioned that because yeah,
Yeah, got to. And again, it doesn't, it's one of those things where if people, and then if you stay longer, cool, right? But I always say start with what you're comfortable
what
with.
you
And
want,
then I think a
what you
reason
want,
why I bring this
what
up,
you
yeah, is
want.
because I think a lot of times, like, or not a lot of times, let me reframe that, but sometimes, I just hear again, just it's hard. The holidays are hard for some people, which kind of go into one of the other pieces. Another tip just finding your breath, right? Finding your breathing whenever you're in those moments that can be high stress. Getting that fresh air, taking a breath, and really just like resetting. Right? We talk about that all the time. Resetting in moments where maybe feelings are coming up, or you can do like a little self check in, or maybe take a walk with someone and just kind of let that out, so it doesn't affect the rest of the gathering or the function, because we've seen that. But I also think a lot of that is because again, now that we are in, as we get older, just some people aren't around because maybe they passed away, maybe they're not with us anymore. So there's a lot of there's grief and there's loss, or traumatic experience happen around the holidays, right? So for the
Yeah.
person, let's just say for that person who maybe lost someone and around Thanksgiving or Christmas, or and like maybe it's fresh, maybe it's not, but are still kind of figuring that out. And of course, going back to the places where you spent your holidays, when you're
Yeah.
with your loved ones, and all those
Brings it
things,
out.
we know activate a lot of emotions.
Absolutely.
What would be kind of your like best advice for them, just or your
Yeah.
thoughts? One specifically, number one, just general advice, and number two, how maybe they can even advocate in respect to boundaries so that they're being respected.
Yeah. So I really uh yeah, like that you mentioned this because something I talk about often and it's important for me and I just advise others to do is to really focus on the things that bring you joy, right? There'll be things that people are like, again, you mentioned like you may have lost someone, a loved one or whatever. Now, certain things are triggering that to bring it back up, and you're feeling it kind of all over again, or you're in a certain location where they would be too, but they're not. It's like focus on the things that bring you joy, right? Even if that's the good times with that person, focus on that. If that's you just, oh man, I went for a beautiful walk yesterday, focus on that. Focus on those things that bring you joy because then it helps as well with that the mental space, right? We go back to the beginning part of it about with your mental, but yeah, focus on the things that truly bring you joy. That's as
Mm,
practical
I love it.
as I
I
can
love
get
it.
with that one. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And then I'm gonna add on to that because again, part of your brand.
Yeah.
All right, come on, throw it up, throw it up.
uh,
You know what I'm saying?
the mic in
Yes,
the way, but
yes. There it is, joyful styles. But another thing I want to add on to that too, especially when it comes to like grief and loss, do
yeah.
the things that bring you joy, definitely. And then I would also encourage and invite those who might be struggling with that this holiday season. Make a list or share some things that even brought your loved one joy,
Yeah. That's next level.
and see if you can bring that into the space, into your
Yeah.
home, into the gathering. Right? It's like
Yeah. That's good.
honoring those who aren't with us. Now let's actually be more intentional and say, hey, what brought Aunt so and so or Uncle so and
Yeah.
so joy? Or when did
Yeah.
we, or here's a better question, how to reframe it. When did we see the most joy in grandma's face? In
That's
grandpa's
good.
face,
Yeah.
right? And whoever's not with us face, right? And then I'm gonna
Yeah.
take it to the third level because I like, hey, reach in, reach academy, right? Like, so the third level, the third
Let's
question I would
go.
even go in is looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw joy in your face with other people?
Yeah.
Because I think finding the activities is great, the walk, the breathing, the music. But then it's like, okay, and then finding joy in what our family members who might not be with us, anymore is definitely powerful in bringing that into the space. But having that moment, just like looking in the mirror and just saying like, okay, what brings you joy? Like for reals, like when was the last time you had like really experienced it that internally without anything necessarily even something having to happen
Yeah. Just
or
yeah.
do something. And I think that
Yeah.
to me that's the essence of what the holiday should be about.
100%.
I was telling Ray this morning during our podcast recording, before our podcast recording, I was like, I'm in a very good rhythm right now with work, with ministry, with business. I said, but I want to kind of I'm glad my in-laws are coming and family members are coming today,
Yeah.
because I was like, I want to pause and get that feeling again of like
Yeah.
that joy of like, oh, good, like we're about to eat, family's coming, we're about to turn the movies on, like nothing's happening, right? Like all those, just that just giddy, like, I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
And then it took me to that place of like, okay, that's where we want to stay. Like that's the focus. Like it's not the fact that my mom had like her second breast cancer surgery on a Thanksgiving a couple of years ago, and I thought she wasn't gonna be here. It's not my one of my best friends lost their dad. It's like, yes, let's honor that. But the joy that I'm focusing on is really just that, like, yo, we got breath in our body. We get to watch,
Absolutely.
first world problems, right? We got on demand, we got Netflix, right? We got all these things that we know the rest of the world just doesn't have.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, focusing, and I think this is probably why I wanted you on, because it was like, just
Yeah.
bringing you on just
That
to get
inner
to know
child.
you and connect, and just really address that for myself,
Yeah.
of how I want to enter this season,
Hmm.
how I want to enter the season with joy. So of
Yeah.
course, got to get joyful
Absolutely.
styles up in here.
Let's
Shout out to the
go.
Joneses real quick. Oh, I can't even see their. They got their message right there. Shout out to the Joneses, veterans growing America. I'm gonna throw that in right there in the
Uh,
middle. What's
yeah.
going on? Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. My bad. That just like whoop, it went that way. So, yeah, sharing those happy memories,
No,
just
I
taking a
like
deep
that.
breath. Anything else you want to add as we kind of just, thing again? I'll just do a little recap. One, we talked about managing those expectations. So, right there's a mindset. Two is just, really checking in with yourself emotionally throughout the day, throughout the functions, the day before, like on your way, wherever you're feeling
Hmm.
anything come up for you, like what is it, what's causing it, and then do you have even a plan, right? Do you even have a
Yeah.
plan when these things happen? So coming up with a plan, making sure that you have your breathing techniques on point. All right, and look at there, the Joneses. J is for Jesus first, O is for others next, Y is for yourself. I love it, Les. I love it. I love it. And then let's see here. And then again, just when if you're dealing with grief and loss, right? Like really finding that joy within yourself, within those who may not be with us, and then even on yourself in a whole nother level, right? That's that
Yeah.
realize what your realize level. That's that
Exactly.
third level. So
I love it. I love it.
anything else you want to add? And again, this was totally, totally impromptu,
Oh
sis. I
yeah.
want to just thank you for just taking the time and just to share your knowledge, all. All right, the world, your favorite, was it the world's favorite? The your
Your favorite boundaries coach and number one boundaries coach in the world.
There you go. There you go. Your favorite boundaries coach, number one boundaries coach in the world. She's speaking what she's seeking, so she sees what she
Absolutely.
says. Um, any final thoughts? Just again, just generally speaking, as we approach this holiday season, because I didn't even talk about the finances and setting budgets. That's gonna be on a
Oh
different
yeah.
episode, because
Yeah.
there's financial boundaries we need to be putting on ourselves, so
Oh.
we're not getting into debt.
Oh, absolutely.
All different other kinds of stuff. But I think right now I just wanted to just really tap into that, like that mindset, the emotional piece, the more practical stuff for our audience. Any last thoughts, comments you'd like to add before we
Let's
sign
see.
off?
I know just something that popped in my mind, my spirit, and I kind of mentioned it, but making sure that if you're like someone and you're going into these situations, you're feeling what you're feeling, all these different things, if you don't even know necessarily what to do, right? Exactly. Just kind of like practice, kind of walk through that, right? With yourself, right, in your mind, or with someone else as well, because it's like at the end of the day, it's important for you as a person to be good. Like without you, there's none of that other stuff. So
Hmm.
making sure you're good first. And yeah, just wanted to put that out there and doing it with joy, of course. Like yeah, the epitome of it all. Like definitely doing it with the joy, that
Hmm.
deep deep joy that you
That
talked about, because
deep, deep joy.
that's how I see it anyway. It's like it's an inside thing. It's like no one can steal it, no one can take it away from you because they didn't give it to you. Yeah, so that deep deep joy,
Yes,
that's where it's at.
absolutely. And just remind me, right? Like it's that oxygen mask mentality.
Oh, 100%.
Right, we can't take care of others, we can't pour from an empty cup, right, if we're not taking care of ourselves. And so definitely, as we approach again, I'm sure we're going to do another session. I'm going to be putting out more stuff, but I just really wanted to just, before we get into the thick of things, because it's
Yeah.
traffic is crazy right now, people are out there, right, feelings are on full blast, just in general, like traveling is the busiest travel time of the year, and all those things, right, that bring up stress, and all those things can like have an impact on whether or not we're actually being healthy or not healthy,
Yep.
right? So again, manage expectations, and when you get to the airport,
You already
manage
know.
manage the expectation, right? When you're driving to of family members when you're going to the mall
Yeah.
or for for Black Friday, whatever your tradition are, like managing those expectations are super important. And if you can do it
Absolutely.
all with joy,
Absolutely.
if
That's
you could
it.
do it all with joy, again, like we can't
You
control,
have the
control the
choice.
controllables.
Absolutely.
But again, use the tool. So have a plan, practice your breathing, self check in regularly with yourself, with others,
Yeah.
and manage those expectations. And again, honoring those who may not be with us, not comparing last holiday to this holiday or two holidays ago. It's like because today's a new day, tomorrow's a new day.
Absolutely. And
All
you're a
right,
new
so
person. You're a
yes,
different person.
and
Yeah.
you exactly, I love it, and I love when you said that. You're like, 'cause- and you're not the same person that you were. And it kind of reminds me of one of my elders used to say, because I used to like dwell in the past, right? High flight attendant in my feelings, always dwelling in the past. And she would always say, your past is cool. Like, remember where you come from, but your future should always be better than it was yesterday.
Absolutely.
Like, why do you wish, like, why do people want to keep going back to the past when tomorrow should actually be better than it was back then? And so that's when I started
Absolutely.
shifting my mindset. She's like, hold on to that. Like, let that be a part of you, but don't always want to go back.
Yeah.
And like ET always says, we got to go forward. We got to
Forward.
go
We're not
forward.
going back.
We're
We're
not
not going
going
back.
back. We're not going
Yeah.
back. So, all right, Jazz, I appreciate you taking some time to just jump on this live stream here. Again, it's on Facebook, on YouTube. I'll be sure to share those links. And I'll be sure if anyone's interested to getting to know more or even, want to support her brand, she has the merch. She has all that stuff. We'll be sure to put those links in the description. Support local business. That's coming up this Saturday. But just more importantly, y'all, we want y'all to have joy this coming holiday
Absolutely.
season and beyond. But we
Yeah.
know we need the tools, right? We can't just think it. We can't just pray it. Like that's important, but we want to give y'all some practical tools, practical steps, and we'll be sure to put some links for more resources in the description below. But until then, y'all, as always, it doesn't happen until you realize with your realize. Come on,
Realize.
and we out of here, y'all.
Let's
Peace.
go. Peace.